Welcome to Chautauqua People. My name is John V. Our guest today is Stephen Stout. Stephen started out in Chicago, graduated from Southern Methodist University in Texas. Then he got himself a job in Milwaukee, eventually went to New York City, where he joined the union as an actor and director, and furthermore continued for 30 years in the business and taught along the way for 19. He and his wife have come to Chautauqua. Suddenly there were babies. They started out coming for a week, then 2 weeks, then 3 weeks. Then they bought into Chautauqua, and now they are year-round Chautauquans. He claims to be one of the busiest retirees ever. So how did your family find its way to Chautauqua?
I was hired here in 1999 to do a play at the theater on the grounds, and as an equity guest artist, play called A Girl's Life, and I played her father. I was 51 at the time, and I think I was 51. Yeah, I think I was. Might have been younger, I don't even remember. But it was, I couldn't believe it. I flew up with the woman who was playing my wife in the play, the other guest artist, and it was nighttime, and there we were coming on the grounds in the dark, and I got up in the morning and I was in a very short bed. It did not fit my body, and I didn't sleep too well, of course, but I got up and took a walk, and I couldn't believe the lake, the place, and I found a payphone, as one did in 1999, and called my wife and said, "Kendall, get the kids, get them in the car. You won't believe this place. Come on up here for a long weekend or whenever you can get away," because she was working. But she was able to get away for a long weekend and came up, and we've been coming back ever since.
How do the kids like it?
They liked it a lot when they were little, especially one of them. The other one always liked it. But there was a point at which our boy child said, "This is just a bunch of old people who wish they were back in college." and I said, yeah, that's right. It's really kind of fun that way. I mean, there's a lot of staying green at the top, as my father would say it. You know, learning, always learning in your life. And he took that very seriously. Loved to say it. And to me, that's sort of the nature of the beast. And so he never kind of clicked as much with it. The irony there is that he was living in our apartment, in our house here, last year, until we had to kick him out because we had renters coming in. So, but he's living locally, so we're delighted he's around.
Now, what do you do in retirement on the grounds?
There's a lot of community now. I think the number batted around is about 150 people now, year-round. And that, while that sounds little, especially compared to 5,000-6,000 people who are generally around, or anywhere between 4 and 6 during the season, it's a pretty hardy group, even though the weather isn't as extreme as it might be these days. But we like it. We love to see people come in the spring, and then we love to see them go. And we get it back in the way we like it, which is a little more peaceful, a little more, even though there's construction and all that going on in the off season, but it's a beautiful fall, I don't have to tell you that, and a beautiful spring. And the winter is milder and milder all the time, which is, I like it. I grew up in Chicago, so I know from snow, and I kind of miss the fact that the lake doesn't always freeze. Although I have been here during its freezing, just to come up for the winter, for the winter break or whatever, for a week or two.
So plenty of activities during the year.
Yes, I'm involved with Bob McClure's Chautauqua Readers that started years ago now, over 20, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I direct some of those plays as readings, and I've been in a bunch. And that is once a month that we get together to do that. We have each other over for dinner when we're around, all of us, various places. And this year, a kind of wonderful thing happened with a coffee need, because there was no coffee anywhere to get coffee in the season, and so a bunch of people got together and created Common Grounds, which you might have heard about.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife Kendall is one of those, but she was not the first of those people, but she joined quite immediately thereafter to be part of the group that sort of runs it. And it's really fun. It's a place where people can come. It's open from like 9 till 3, I think, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who, if they didn't have that place, they wouldn't see anybody. And they like to come there for camaraderie, play a game of chess or do a puzzle, just be with other people.
So what goes on? The table there and some board games?
Board games, there are, the people who staff it are there as hosts, and just sitting and talking. What's up? I was in there one time during the off season, and an Amish guy came in, and he said, "Could I use your phone?" And I said, "Sure, of course. What do you need me to do?" He said, "Would you please call it for me?" And I went, "Sure. What's the number?" And he needed to get his driver to come and pick him up because they were looking for fishing, ice fishing, and he went and bore a hole about 10 feet out, and it was clear that the lake was only so far. It was about 20 feet out,
Mm-hmm.
frozen. And he bore one hole and went, "Nope, we're not going to do that." And so he wanted to call off his gang
Mm-hmm.
and get everybody back. So that was fun to talk with him.
So how long does Common Grounds perform? From what months to what months?
It was started with the blessing of the institution themselves in Hultquist on the
Mhm.
grounds. And I think it was pretty much as soon as the season was over, and once they got their decision made that they would back it and allow that to happen. I think it happened, I don't know when it happened, but it will be as soon as the season's over until probably late May.
Mm-hmm. And it's the weekdays or every day of the week?
It was weekdays to begin with, I think, and then it became every day.
Mm-hmm.
And on the weekends, slight adjustments and times and things, but it really became a place to gather. You knew where people would be at some point that day. It was a great place. I'll meet you over at Common Grounds. It was a great name for it.
Yeah, that's terrific. Now, tell me a little more about your acting career. What roles you played,
Right.
favorites, and
Oh.
maybe not so favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, I came right out of college, undergraduate, ready to work because I was exactly the type that I should be. I didn't have to sort of wait to become the character actor that was growing in me. I was a young leading man, and I went through the theater communications group national auditions, and before I graduated from college, I ended up having a contract in my pocket at Milwaukee Rep, as you mentioned, and so that was really, really, really lucky for me. And I happened to be coming out of college right when the regional theater movement was really going in our country. So all these regional theaters, which were starting out in the 60s, were blazingly hot in 1974 when I graduated from college. And I got 3 offers, and I took the Milwaukee one because it was the one that I liked the casting best. And it was for a season, so I was going to be there for an entire season as a company member. And I wanted to put what I learned to work right away. So I did that for 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to New York thereafter. I realized that I was offered a third season, and I thought, I don't think I want to raise children here. I don't want to get married here. I think I want to get to New York. I didn't want to go to LA. Those are the two places where an actor has to be, one or the other. And I wanted to be in New York, so because it's where most of theater is really cast, and it's where I wanted to be and where I had friends. So I loved working at Milwaukee Rep. It was a great way to get going. 8 shows a week, 8-week runs, long runs, very appreciative audiences. I did Moliere, I did Shakespeare, I did new plays, and I worked with some really lovely people, some of whom now are very famous, including Glenn Close, and Jeffrey Tambor was in the company, who went off to quite a career in TV and film, mostly TV. And just one of the funniest men I've ever worked with. It was just really fun to work with him. And then I went to New York. And as you say, I was already a member of the acting union, stage union, but I had to join SAG and AFTRA. Those are 2 different unions back then. Now they're combined.
Can you tell a little more what they did?
Yeah, Screen Actors Guild is the actors union, was then for anything on screen. So commercials, films, pretty much that's it. And then AFTRA was for television. So a soap opera, for example, would be AFTRA. And I did a bunch of days on a few of the New York-based soaps, but nothing special. My favorite thing that I ever did on a soap was some stunt work, because I was a stage fight guy. And a friend of mine was the fight director at one of the ABC soaps. I can't remember which one now. And he called me, he said, "Stephen, I got a scene for you tomorrow. Can you be there at 5:30 in the morning?" I went, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "Well, you've got some lines, but don't worry about those. It's you basically try to pick up one of the lead's girlfriends in a bar. You get a chair broken over your head. You get thrown over the bar." I said, "Oh, great, that'll be fun." So I did that, and
You're a pretty big guy.
I'm a pretty big guy, but I know how to fall.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about stage fighting in London when I was in sophomore year in college. Went for the summer and studied with Central School with B.H. Barry was then the guy to work with on stage fighting anywhere in the world. And before he moved to New York and became B.H. Barry, he was Barry Halliday when I met him in 1972. But then he moved to New York, and then I worked with him here as well in the States. And every now and then he'd say, "I can't do Carnegie Mellon for 2 weeks in the winter. Can you go do a workshop for them?" And I said, "Sure, I got it." And I was also with him on To Tell the Truth. Do you remember To Tell? Yeah. Well, he was the real guy on a show, and we thought it would be really funny if I could be one of the contestants, and then we'd fight about it, and then he'd win the fight. But Goodson Todman, the producers, did not want that to happen. So they brought me in to demonstrate with him once he was chosen. So I was back at school. I was back at SMU, my junior year, I think it was. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, Stephen, I need you to come to New York. We're doing a thing on To Tell the Truth, and you have to come on with me. And do you want to do it?" And we talked about maybe that happening, but it couldn't. So he said, "Well, then you just come on, and we'll teach Peggy Cass how to strangle, or Bill Cullen, we'll get him to swing his fist." And we did all that. It was really funny to do. Strange, but you never know what you're going to get into. So.
That's great. Tell me a little more about what the union does.
Okay, so Screen Actors, all the unions are there. Well, first of all, I'll talk about Equity, my longest union that I've been in, and the one that is the stage director, the stage actors union, and stage managers. And that's important because my wife was a stage manager when I met her at McCarter Theater in Princeton. So that's an important person in any show, the stage manager. She's been, by the way, stage managing me for 42 years, and I'm delighted about it. The Actors Union was formed in the teens of the 19 teens, basically to deal with abusive producers who would want you to do 3, 4, 5 shows a day or whatever. Anything goes. So to try to get it so that you could actually have a living wage and not be overworked was the entire idea behind Actors Equity when it was first formed. And in order to be an actor in Actors Equity, when I came out of school, you had to have a job as an equity actor. So I was given my union card at Milwaukee Rep, and that's how I just got it because they wanted to hire me. Whereas if you don't have a union card, you couldn't back then buy your way in to that union. So now that is the case, but back then, when it was really competitive to get into the union, you had to have a job. And SAG was the same way, Screen Actors Guild, and the others. So I was bailed out of a play at one point when I was down in Miami Beach doing a French farce with Louis Jourdain. Remember him? He was a fairly well-known film actor. And he was playing in this Feydeau farce, which is what I call a door slammer. Right? Someone goes out one door, someone comes in the other door. It's a comedy. And we were on Miami Beach, and we were at the Deauville Hotel, and the producer said, I don't have any money. I can't pay you this week. And so bells went off. Someone from Actors Equity came down with a bag of cash and handed money to everybody to get out of the hotel and be paid. And that comes out of the bond that a producer pays at the beginning of a show. So yay for Actors Equity. Yay. And they also are involved with the Actors Fund, which is now called the Entertainment Fund. The Actors Fund, when I was an actor, I had a job at Hartford Stage Company, but I needed a little time to get the rent together, and I knew I had that contract, and so I went into the Actors Fund, and I said, I need $300 just to get my rent paid and get onto this next contract. And so we talked, I showed him the contract and all that. He came back with a check for $500, and I said, this is for more money. He said, no, that's what I'm giving you. You use it well. I know you're good for it. Not about that. Thank you. You're done. So I went off and did the job. I came back. As soon as I got back into town, I had a check for $500. I went to the Actors Fund. I said, I want to give this. He said, no, that's your money. You save your money. That was a gift to you because you earned it.
Whoa.
So I've been going to a lot of benefits. After that, I went to a lot of Actor Fund benefits and paid for the pleasure to be there to fund that wonderful, wonderful foundation. So that was an important moment for me.
We had a musician from the symphony here last year who spoke a bit about the unions and how physically demanding it is to make music, bowed instrument.
Yeah.
The union really played a significant role in establishing the work standards for them.
Right. There are IA people as well, which is IATSA, which is the stagehand union, who work at the institution, and they work they work. I think they're at the Ridge as well, and I don't know that they're elsewhere immediately in the area, but certainly in Buffalo. And so it's a, yeah, it's.
And the stagehand work can be dangerous.
Oh, sure. I mean, yes, of course, and so could acting. You know, a lot of people got injured in that Broadway musical, Spider-Man thing, where people were falling out of their harnesses and stuff, and lots of injuries were happening. So there are accidents happen. I've actually, in a stage fight, had the end of my little finger was, the guy came in way too high. It's not the way I staged it, but I put the sword up to do to block it, and he hit my little finger. I did the play, I went through the rest of the play, and then got my finger sewn back on in costume. That was in Milwaukee. That was King Lear.
So you were in New York City. Where did you live there?
First moved in to the Upper West Side. I was at 74th in Amsterdam in what used to be the Berkeley Hotel. It was a little one-bedroom. I couldn't believe I had to pay $150 a month for that apartment with my girlfriend. And then I met a friend who lived in Park Slope, and he said, "Oh, you could get a whole floor for $150." And I found a floor right in his neighborhood. I worked with him up at Hartford, and within 9 months, I moved out of the Upper West Side. I kept running into people I knew, casting directors, actors, and it was because I was walking my dog. I had a dog. I moved to New York City with a dog, and on Labor Day of 1976, and I would run into people in the park all the time who I knew, and I didn't like that. I wanted to be a little more anonymous. So we moved to Park Slope in Brooklyn, and then she went off and did a show on the road. I went off and did some shows, and we rented out our apartment, and we split up, and then this and that and the other thing. So I lived there, and then I met Kendall when I went to McCarter to do a play down in Princeton, and a season there. And I was there for 2 seasons as well. And we hit it off quite well, and she moved in the day that Reagan was inaugurated. So in that apartment in Brooklyn, and then we moved to 2 others, and finally one of them was a co-op. So we actually owned our final one. At one point, Kendall said, "You know, I think one of us should have a real job, and it should be me," meaning her, because you're really good at what you do, and I don't want to be the greatest stage manager in the world, and I didn't want to be a lighting designer's assistant, which she also did, a Broadway lighting designer, and so she got into the ad game through her connections from school, and she was at J. Walter Thompson for a long time, and then McCann Erickson, another ad agency, and then she went to the client side at Forbes magazine, and then she ended her career as working for a company that trained people to ascend to the C-suite in various ways, and so she had a real job all that time, which was really nice, because my salary did this a lot. You know, I'd have a really good year, and then I'd not, and then a really good year, and then maybe 2 nots, and then like that.
Now, during your teaching years,
Yes.
how did that probably gave you more level,
Oh yeah.
low income?
But you should have seen the head of the school when I went in there. He said, "How am I going to pay you? How do I decide how to pay you?" And I said, "Well, I got pay stubs if you want that." So I brought in a couple of years worth of pay stubs, and he said, "Well, this year you had 17 employers. Looks like you can't keep a job." I said, "No, that was a good year." That was a good year. Welcome to being an actor. I mean, I never had a credit card until I was married, and one of us had a real job, because you look like you can't keep a job. I mean, back in the day. Now you can do that. People are, but back then, I couldn't get a credit card. Not even close, but I was always working. I always had a job. I was never had to be a bartender or a waiter. It just,
Just kept right on going with the good stuff.
I did. I ended up being someone that people kind of knew what they got, and I worked with a lot of wonderful people, some of whom were quite famous and all of that. But I was what I call kind of a working class actor. I would have been fine being a star. It never happened. It's not what I wanted, per se. But I'd have taken it had I gotten it. But I really loved the family that I made of friends. I mean, it is a family.
And how did this kind of intermittent work affect child raising?
It worked out pretty well. Kendall and I were on different schedules. So when we were living in Brooklyn with just our boy, sometimes I would bring the baby into the city when I was doing a Broadway show, and I'd be coming in about 6:30, and she'd be leaving about 6:30, and we'd meet on the platform of a subway.
Whoa.
She'd be in the head car as close to 6 o'clock as possible, 6:15. And one time, I actually kind of did a naughty thing. The doors open, I saw her, she was on her way downtown to go to Park Slope, where we lived, and I pushed the stroller into the car and said, "Take my baby, please." And the doors closed. And she turns to everyone and goes, "He's an actor. This is our son.
Yeah.
He's just being a jerk right now." Yeah, I heard about that later, but it's a good story.
Yeah, it's a great story. Okay, I got one question I love to ask.
Yes.
And this is sort of the finishing question if you've seen any of these interviews. We have a lot of smart young people on the grounds of Chautauqua. And if one of them came to you and said, "Mr. Stout, I would love to have a career in the theater or movies," what would you recommend? What would be your counsel?
My counsel would be to make sure you know the literature. Know theatrical literature, going back certainly to Shakespeare, the Greeks if possible, because they started this thing called theater. Know the literature, know it well. Then start going to plays more and more. Figure out which ones interest you and why. Know who you are. Be realistic about who you are, but also be willing to change who you are to fit a play. Know how to do dialects. Know how to walk in a different way. Know what it is to get inside a play, because our job in the dark is to give a story to another group of people on the other side of the footlights. And that magic happens right between wherever the audience is and wherever the actors are. And to me, that's a sacred place. And it's something that I've been doing since I was 14. And not professionally, but it's when I started acting, and I just was totally hooked. I mean, I made people laugh. It just made me so happy. And I thought, okay, this is something I can do. This is something I really want to do. And my dad was like, "How about bartending? Let me give you a bartending class." And he did. He gave me a bartending class right after I had that contract. And I knew I was going to go to Milwaukee Rep in January. He said, "Look, one thing I can do. You don't want to come into my business. You don't want to be, but I can give you a degree in bartending. I can give you a week-long class." So I took the thing. I was a bartender at the very beginning of my career in Chicago, and I never did it again. I didn't have to. But it was a lovely gesture on his part So have a thing, have a job that you can do that is a subsistence job. That's an important thing to have for a lot of people. You have to, because New York is not cheap. You'll probably be living with 3 or 4 people, maybe more, in an apartment that's meant for 2 or 1. It's not easy. You got to get lucky, but you got to be ready to be lucky. When you're lucky, you got to be ready to show your stuff. And when I was a director, I took it very seriously about how to help actors come into the room and be their best selves. I'd get right up from the table, I'd go over, I'd shake their hands, I'd try to make them feel warm and comfy and in a place where they could do their best work, because I'd been through it myself so many times. So I really enjoyed that.
That's great. We are out of time. What else do we need to share?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, this has been fun, and do come back.
Happy to.
By all
Happy to.
means.
Anytime. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. This has been fun.